The ZV-1M2 is here, the point-and-shoot camera, not to be confused with the very well-named ZV-E10, ZV-E1, but this is the point-and-shoot budget beast. This is an amazing camera. However, there is one thing people are not going to be pleased about. We'll get to that and all of the new features. If you've never heard of the ZV-1 before, it's basically one of the best starting cameras that anyone can buy. It's super affordable, it's point-and-shoot, it's really good value for money because the lens literally comes with it. Shoots great 4K, takes 20 megapixel photos, and honestly, regardless of who you are, it's a great camera, especially for this beautiful autofocus, which will never lose you compared to some brands, maybe like Canon. And let's jump straight into the best feature on this new camera, which is the 18 to 50mm f1.8 to f4 lens. Finally, Sony has answered our calls. 24mm on the old ZV-1 was way too tight and you couldn't vlog once you put that stabilization on. It's going to be way too cropped in your face, but now 18mm with active stabilization, shooting in 4K, which also crops your image a little bit. It's finally great and it's perfect for vlogging. Naturally, because a wider lens sees more things, it won't shake as much, so there will be better stability. And also with clear image zoom, this actually zooms all the way to 70mm technically, because after it hits 50, it can zoom a bit more for that clear image zoom, and therefore it's technically 18 to 70, but it's a true 18 to 50mm if you get what I mean. So we mentioned stabilization really quickly, and Sony has again answered our prayers, and the stabilization is a lot better than before. Back in the day on the old ZV-1, even on active mode, it really wasn't good. It was shaky all over the place, but now with active mode, it does come out close to gimbal-like. Obviously, if you just run like crazy and try and film, it's still going to be shaky, but it's a lot more manageable now. With a bit of a ninja walk and some careful foot placements, it looks really nice. You can check out the cinematic video I made, completely handheld, and the fact that it's completely handheld, no gimbal, screw the gimbal back there. I think I got some amazing results, and I was pretty impressed myself genuinely at how good these shots came out with this camera completely handheld. And the autofocus on this camera is still top notch, basically exactly the same, if not better than before. It focuses lightning fast, and it's a big selling point of this camera. Product focus mode, if you don't know already, is basically, I've got it on right now on my big ZV. You put something to the camera, it'll focus perfectly, and you look a lot more professional. No need to hunt, no need to find any focus. If you're running a YouTube channel or something, this is extremely welcome because it's just so convenient. Put whatever you want to the camera, focuses like magic, so highly recommend. And we've got the new animal tracking. It's not the AI autofocus chip that people hope for. I don't understand why some users expect these high-end features to be in the most entry-level camera, but at least it can track animals now, and here are some clips of me tracking my dog. It looks amazing. I think it does very well. You do have to tap on the screen a little bit, but it's great to have it, and it honestly works amazing. Another cool feature that they advertise is the cinematic vlog mode, and it's basically something we've already seen with the ZV-E1, which I'm filming on right now. Basically, there's baked in black bars and you can put tons of presets and you can get the image you like. Here's a link to Jason Morris explaining it. It's cool and all, but I wouldn't use it because if you're shooting a vlog, you really don't need cinematic black bars, and it would have been nice to be able to get rid of that. However, you can't, and some people might not be a fan of that. It's still cool regardless. Another huge plus about the new camera is that it now has a much better user experience. It has the modern software where you can just swipe things away, you can adjust anything, have these quick menus, and it's honestly just a pleasure to use. Speaking of usability, I'm pleased to say it has a USB-C port, which is basically a stock standard. I can't believe the old one even had a micro, but that's nice to have as well. And lastly, I guess this is a pro, but the price of the camera is still very cheap and probably the best bang for your buck that you can get, considering that this technically comes with a lens and you won't need to buy anything else. It's definitely the most affordable, and it sits at 1,500 Australian dollars. So you might be thinking that's a lot, but that should equate to around like 850 US, which I'm not sure about the final price. You're going to have to check that because I'm not sure, I'm not from America. But that's basically in line with what it was in the past. I know it's gone up a little bit for Australians, but that's just because our currency sucks and there's not much we can do about that. So overall, despite inflation, despite how bleak our economic state of the world is right now, it's still essentially the same price. So we gotta give Sony, I guess, hats off to that. Now we've got all these pros, this new lens, and it's worth mentioning that the form factor is still amazing and really small. It was literally small enough to go on my FPV drone, and it just fits in your pocket, can go anywhere with you. The fact that the lens goes in, comes out, it's just super convenient, and that's one of the best parts of this camera. I mean, just look at it compared to my phone. It's like a fraction of the size. It's a bit thicker, but this can go into any pocket you want. The flip out screen is still here, which is very, very important in my opinion, especially for vlogging. But that's just another important thing to keep in mind. The only difference is, like I mentioned, that USB port. Everything else is practically the same. Let's also knock out some other quick features. We got a directional mic, which supposedly gives better audio through that grate there. I'll put a sample here. All right, so now we have a real world vlogging test, and everything's basically on auto. You got Cine version 2 or whatever that picture profile is called, PP6, and everything's on auto, microphone's on auto, and this is probably the truest vlogging experience you'll get. The stabilization is on active, and how do I sound? How does it look? It's a bit of a tough dynamic range situation here because this looks a lot better than if I face over here, which is kind of like backlit, but I think overall it's doing a very solid job. So overall, with all these cool features and all these pros, it sounds like Sony has answered all of our prayers. However, there are definitely some cons, which makes me a little bit upset. This camera's still amazing, but we'll dive into that. Alright, so if you notice, I haven't really mentioned any frame rates or megapixels or anything like that as a pro because sadly, this is the exact same sensor as we had before. Everything in terms of the internals from the ZV-1 is reused, which is pretty disappointing in my opinion. You'd think in 2 years, you can at least shoot, I don't know, like 4K 30 with some better dynamic range. I don't know, but maybe that's asking for too much as the most entry-level camera, but everything's basically exactly the same in terms of performance. I mean, it's not all that bad. I'm someone who uses the A7 IV, the ZV-E1, great cameras for video, and although this is a 1-inch sensor, which is reused, I think it actually turned out very well, and I was quietly impressed by the photo and video performance. Here's a cinematic video that I shot. I literally put this on my FPV drone, and I was genuinely pleasantly surprised at how the video turned out, and it was actually cinematic, which I was, again, surprised about. Apparently, Cine 2 is a very popular picture profile, but I actually went to film with S-Log 3. I did some noise reduction as well if you want to get nerdy about things, but again, it turned out very well, and I could preserve some decent dynamic range, maybe squeeze 11 to 12 stops out, and it did pretty well indeed. So if you're looking for a great performing photo video camera, this thing still will do well for the majority of YouTubers and the demographic who are looking for this camera. Definitely better than your iPhone, so rest assured that's perfectly fine. It's just a bit of a shame after 2 years that the sensor couldn't be improved further. But that also begs the question, why would a beginner need something like 10-bit video or like 4K 60, which do beginners need that? I don't know, especially because this is a vlogging camera. You don't want slow motion vlogging, right? Some other cons is if you use the gamma assist mode to help you with S-Log, when you take your photo, it doesn't turn off automatically when you switch onto that photo mode, which is a little bit annoying. But again, beginners probably won't be using S-Log, only tryhards like me. Also, it's a bit of a shame that the battery still kind of sucks. It runs out in like max 30 minutes. I don't know if it'll even go to 30 minutes, so you'll need spare batteries or carry a power bank. Bright side is it will power really quickly, so you can recharge it within like, I don't know, just leave it in when it's laying down and it will recharge fairly well. Another bit of a con is because it's an 18 to 50mm lens, f4.0 at the long end, that means we're going to lose out on a fair amount of bokeh compared to the 24 to 70, which on the long end was 2.8. So you can see some examples of where I'm fully zoomed in and you can see a little bit of bokeh. Again, it's a 1-inch sensor, so the difference isn't too much in the first place, so you shouldn't worry too much, but just to be a bit picky, it's not as cinematic and I guess bokeh-y as the previous camera just because it's wider, but at the same time, I would definitely take the wider camera over the good old 24 to 70. It's also worth noting the second you touch this zoom rocker, the f-stop will basically start increasing immediately. So basically the only time you're at f1.8 is at 18mm, so keep that in mind. Also, f4 on a 1-inch sensor is fairly dark, so if it's like past sunset or sunrise, it's going to get a bit noisy, especially if you're at f4, so just keep that in mind as well. Bit of a con there. So overall, this camera is still definitely amazing. I know it sounds like I listed out a lot of cons there. That's probably because I'm a bit more of a, I guess, try-hard videographer, expecting a bit more performance out the sensor, but to the majority of users, I personally had an amazing time shooting on it. It's just so light, compact, you can take it wherever you want, and that's just priceless in my opinion, versus lugging these fat, oh, these cameras, disgusting, right? So to the demographic that this is suited for, I would definitely recommend it, and it is an amazing camera. But that brings us to the question, who should actually buy this? So if you are someone with the old ZV-1, I don't think it's worth upgrading to just buy a completely brand new. Maybe if you had some decent resale value and maybe upgrade for maybe like $200. It's hard to say at that point, but if you have the old ZV-1, it's probably not worth upgrading because the actual video quality, like I said, the internals are the same. If you have a ZV-F, however, I think it's worth an upgrade. First of all, having a fixed lens for like a do-it-all camera isn't super ideal, so zoom is honestly priceless, so I would probably just upgrade or just not buy the ZV-F in the first place. And if you're just someone in general general who's just looking for a point and shoot. You want to live a very easy, simple life. And like I mentioned, this is actually a ton of fun to shoot on. Whenever you want a lower profile, this thing is so convenient and so fun to use. So overall, if you're someone who's starting their YouTube channel, or you want a little B, C, D camera for your full frame camera, or something that's just super convenient and fun to shoot, this is the camera for you. And after shooting that cinematic video and knowing what this camera is capable, I would still recommend it to anyone in this day and age despite the same sensor. So if you enjoyed, found it valuable, check out the cinematic video I shot. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next one.